Hi, this is Jenny Bair of Living Well Dallas, here with my awesome mom of the day, Sarah Ferguson, on Health Chat. And we're going to talk a little bit more about date night and how to be mindful and present with your family. So one of the things that we were talking a little bit about spiritual time in the last few segments, and how to be present and put the technology away. So what does it mean to you to show up for your kids and be present?
Well, for me,
it's a big question.
It is a big question. It is a big question, but I think that there are signs from them that needs to happen. If it's a behavior thing, that keeps coming up or acting out. And what Mark and I do is we try to do one-on-one time with each kid. And that doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen every week, but it's sort of a goal. And we'll take one kid to do something with us. And it's not just, with Mark, oftentimes it's to run to the hardware store or something like that. Right. But they're girls, so they're not really, that's not always what they want to do. But he's done a great thing of, taking them to the park and, just doing little things together. For me, I think it's actually, putting technology down, not worrying about dinner, not worrying about the have to or the check off list. Right, and physically being present and making myself present and available. And sometimes that's just sitting down next to them and asking them what they're thinking, or it's what would you like to do, and we read a book together, or will you come play with me, and I go play Barbies with them or whatever. But it's a conscious effort, and I don't always pick up on their clues that they need that, which can be, manifested in their behavior. And so, and then again, just trying to make sure that we do the one-on-one time, because our girls are really close in age, but we want them to both know, from both parents, from the male and the female, the mom and the dad perspective, that they're loved and valued. I think that's great that you try to shoot for that one-on-one time. Now, what do you guys do to try to be conscious as a family? To be present all as a family. Like, you probably have outing times, or I don't know. Every family's different. What do you guys do to sort of stay connected as a family? Because you have a lot going on right now in y'all's world. Yes, we do. School and work and all of that. Yeah. Well, we always have dinner together, which is very difficult because Mark is not always home, right, when we would all like to eat. But we do shoot for that time, and it doesn't always seem like it's the most kumbaya, like we're connecting, right? And this is awesome. It's a lot of, we have so much to talk about. Yeah, it's a lot of us asking how their day was, and then saying fine, or whatever. But we've established that was very big in his family, and it's very big in my family. So, wasn't my family, so now it isn't our family. The other thing we do is we had started taking just chunks of time on the weekend, usually on Sundays, and going and doing something outside of the home. So, and for us, it's not expensive. It would be, going to the park, or, just going together as a family. And I think if you talk to the girls about that, they'll say that that's kind of some of their favorite times is when we go and do that. The other thing we do is we always go on a family vacation every year. And Mark grew up doing that, and I grew up doing that, and we always go to Minnesota, which is kind of connection and home for both of us. You didn't say that right. Minnesota. Is that the way you want it? Yeah. Not Minnesota. Anyway, so we go there, and we drive, and it's, it's long, but we've been doing that trip with the girls since they were itty-bitty, and it's something they look forward to, and we go and we stay in his family's lake house, and it's beautiful house, nothing fancy, but we're there, and we're there as a family, and so that's kind of the times that we've carved out of our year and our lives to stay connected. So she brings up a great thing. So there's a thing called the family trip, and then there's another thing called a vacation. Yes, that is a family trip. Yeah, and those are not the same. No, they are not. Pastor Ed Young always says that. He's like, no, it's not a vacation if all the family's going together. That's a family trip. And so we were talking about date night before we started filming, and about some advice that you got from your parents in premarital. From your parents. You also did premarital counseling for couples.
what was their advice?
Well, they modeled this too. So this was, I grew up with this, and we grew up, not extremely wealthy. So we all knew that this was a sacrifice for them to do it, but it was important. And so they went away at least one weekend every year, and it was usually around their anniversary. And that was the advice that they had given their the couples that they did premarital counseling with. And so when Mark and I were in premarital counseling, I just said, we will take a trip.
Claiming it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be expensive, but we will go away for our anniversary every year, and we have, and it's the one thing that both of us look forward to, throughout the year, because that's a true vacation for us, is to be able to go away and just be with each other and not have to worry about kids or food or anything like that. So
snacks in the back seat.
That's right.
Right. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you and Mark have made it work in your relationship to do date night.
Okay.
Because we hear parents should date, because if you do not date your spouse, you might end up dating something or someone else, which is trouble with a capital T.
Yes.
So how do we keep the dating in the family? How do you guys take care of dating?
Well, it usually goes, we both will just kind of, I think, sense or have a feeling of, there needs to be time for us to connect. And we've done the two different types of dating, which I think you talk about. We do the date where we go out and it's away from the home and it's just to have a nice meal, to, whatever. But we also will do it at home too, when I kind of feel like it might be too much for us to get a sitter, it might be too much for us to think about where to go. I'll feed the kids early, put them to bed, and then we'll have this time, this meal. Little window, yeah. And it's, some of our favorite foods from when we were first dating, or try to do something kind of like thematic that way. And that's really kind of how we date.
I love it.
But what are some other ways?
So I usually recommend to couples several types of date night. And it doesn't necessarily have to be date night either. It can be date time, because some people work from home and they can work it out where their intimacy and fun time is, hey, while the kids are at school. And so it really just depends on the couple and what works for you. But I usually recommend you have to have a show me the money date. And I actually learned this from our friend Megan. And she and her husband would dress up in business wear. And they would actually go to Starbucks and be in a neutral location, so they were not at home where everybody could be loosey-goosey and, feelings could arise and get all emotional. They kept all the money talk in a business format in a neutral location, which I think is a great idea, because money for some couples can be supercharged. And if you're in the privacy of your own home and money is a challenge for you in terms of, maybe one person's a spender and one person is a super saver, and that can be the root of a lot of conflict. So, do it like business, meaning set the agenda ahead of time. You guys say, hey, we want to talk about our insurance policy and we want to talk about a quickie budget. Let's look at our monthly budget. Let's see what we're setting aside for the holidays. But you come with agenda items and you both know what's on the table. It's not a surprise to anybody. And you also have guidelines, just as you would if you were in a business meeting. We don't interrupt each other. We can agree to disagree. We can find a solution in the middle. All the things that you would normally do in a business meeting. It's okay to bring some of those great tools about fair play and being equitable into a marriage. That's really important. And so I think if you build it up with the agenda and the guidelines, that helps the money talk go so much further. And I tell people, if you have a little hot action file where your papers are coming in and you know that there's things that you need to discuss, I always have my clients make decisions about, and then when they have their date night about money and it's related to money, then they can pull that out and put that on the agenda, like, hey, you know what, I think we could be saving X amount of money on our house insurance, blah, 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 blah. Instead of doing a hallway drive-by where you're like, hey, and then the other person doesn't really remember, and you're like, well, hey, remember we had that conversation? And you're like, yeah, no, I was getting the baby ready for the bath. So that's date night number one, show me the money. Another date time or date night is called life logistics. So this sort of is linked to money sometimes, But this is where you may say, you know what, we really want to landscape our whole place, or we really want to spend the weekend, you know, really outfitting our garage. We want to paint the floors, we want to organize it, we want to get it all together. So two people may have a different idea of what they, you know, how they want the other person to spend their time on these house projects. So a great way is to, after you have that budget meeting, sort of follow up and have a life logistics meeting. And this can also be scheduling. You know, I encourage people to forecast and look at the week ahead or the 2 weeks ahead of what's coming up, so that you don't have one spouse going, well, aren't you picking up Sue? Well, no, I thought you were doing it. Well, you know, if everybody sits down even for 30 minutes, maybe once a week, and forecasts and look at, hey, let's match up our Google schedules. Let's make this happen so that we're both on the same page. So that, you know, I have a lot of parents that want to alternate. Like, one person drops off in the morning so that they get a little time with the kiddos. Another person picks up so they get time with that kid. And that may be their only one-on-one time that they have, but they work it into the schedule. So that's sort of like a life logistics date. And then, of course, we have the last, which is really the most fun. That's the intimacy and fun date. And I tell people, again, you have to have guidelines. This is not a time to talk about work. This is not a problem-solving time. This is not talk about your kid time. This is all about, hey, you're an interesting person. You're this interesting person that I married that I got all hot and bothered about. And we used to talk about this and that and talk on the phone for hours, or, you know, talk face-to-face for hours and connect. So this is a time where you have fun and you connect. And so what I encourage people to do is make a list. Like, Sarah would make a list of the 10 things that she's like, oh, I've always wanted to do this in Dallas. Mm-hmm. Mark would make his list of 10 things that he loves to do in Dallas. And so one time Sarah would pick, the next time Mark would pick. And, you know, and for some couples, they are going all the time, so going out is really not fun to them, and they really just want to connect. And that's fine too. You know, as long as it's mutually agreed upon between the spouses. I had one couple, they just did not have enough time for sex because their kids were little and in the way, and they wanted to get it on. And they enjoyed walking together. They enjoyed walking because walking, you know, they had good conversations, and then they kind of got excited after walking. And so they had a time set in the middle of the day, Mondays at noon. That was their time. That's when they got together, and it took a lot of pressure off the dude, the guy, because she was overwhelmed and feeling like, I don't have time to say yes. I've got to do the check off on my list. I got to do this and do this before I can get sexy with you. What are you talking about? I don't have time for sex. I don't have time for intimacy. And so both of them knowing that this is a time where, you know, it's not, you have to have sex during this time, but if things are moving in that direction and spontaneity and whatever comes over you, passion comes over you, then that's exciting. But they both knew that there was a possibility, a very strong possibility, that connection was going to happen at that day and time. Then it was sort of like a mental check off, like, oh, it's coming. Mm-hmm. You know, we get to connect again. Mm-hmm. So I was a little long-winded about the date times. But the other thing I want to add is what Sarah was talking about is there's out in the world dates, and then there's at-home dates. And I am all in favor of, you know, not getting fancy and just hanging around the house. But you know that it's coming ahead of time, and so does your spouse. This is the thing. No surprise dates. Both spouses know that the at-home date is happening. So you may already in your mind say, every Wednesday night, we don't have any outside activities, that we don't have sports, we don't have choir, we don't have blah-de-blah. We are going to put the kids to bed early, and they just know that they are having extra reading time, extra quiet time, and they're just going to have to get over it. That we're putting them to bed at this time, and they know Wednesday night is mom and dad time. And actually, they have done some research, and I can't pull the stat off the top of my head right now, but if you start doing that, your kids will follow through. And one couple in the research that I was reading, every night they would come home, you know, between, if you were watching the earlier videos, that exchange between shift 1, where you're coming home from work, and then moving into the nighttime routine into shift 2, there's a school of thought to say, hey, you know, the parents need to have 20 to 30 minutes by themselves, or 15 minutes by themselves. And, you know, you acknowledge your kids, you love on them, you say hello, But we want to reconnect and get on the same page with our spouse during that time. And one of the kids commented to this couple when they didn't, have their couch time, is what they called it. They said, well, why aren't you guys having your couch time? You guys have so much fun and you kiss and you talk. And, and they're like 3 and 5 and they're reporting this. And it's great because kids want to see their parents connecting. They know when there is a disconnect. So it's okay to put your kids in bed half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour early, one night a week, people. You can take that into consideration to have your internal date night. And then, of course, you have the out in the world where you may get a babysitter or do a little co-op situation with your friends, whatever works for you, to get out and make it happen. And what I always encourage couples to do is make sure that you've got the internal date night happening every week. And then the external date night, we want to shoot for, once a week. And, if it's once a month right now or once every 6 weeks, okay, well then we go from 6 weeks to, twice every 6 weeks. And then we just keep on moving it up, just like you would with any other health goal. But it's really important to date your spouse.
Right.
And stay connected because we're busy and other things come up. So you can speak to that better than I can, but anything else that you want to add in about staying connected and date night?
I mean, I think it's just, it is essential and important, and your kids are watching.
They are.
So,
totally watching. They're watching how you connect, how you communicate, your level of intimacy. They're watching all of that. They're taking it in, and they're going, woo, are my parents connected? Is there a disconnect here? And a lot of times acting out, a lot of kids act out, because they need a little one-on-one time, but sometimes they're acting out because they see the discord and the disconnect happening in between the parents. So those are all things to sort of like go, what's happening here?
Yeah.
Why are my kids behaving that way? So I think we've covered date night pretty well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, watch us in our next segment of Health Chat.